Main event of the evening.
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today we are discussing Season 7, Episode 18, The New Arnolds.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in The New Arnolds.
We open with various teens and young adults dancing in the Cunningham living room as a replacement for Arnold's while it gets renovated after being burned down last episode, much to Howard's consternation when he gets home.
What is going on here?
Quiet, Howard, I'm on a roll here.
Marion is baking burgers in the kitchen. Howard turns off the music and makes everyone leave, including Ralph and Potsy.
Oh, it's okay, Howard. You can have our table.
Yeah.
We were just leaving.
It's not a great table. It's right by the kitchen.
As the two of them depart, Fonzie arrives at home and tells them the new Arnolds will put the old one to shame. Potsy is surprised they're still calling it Arnold's and not naming it after Fonzie. Fonzie likes the idea.
Name it after myself. What do you think of that idea?
And goes to order a sign and not tell Al. At the restaurant, as it's being renovated, Al is a bundle of nerves, yelling at the construction workers while they're on lunch break.
But you went out to lunch 2 hours ago. You should be back to work right now.
Richie manages to calm him down, somewhat. Al admits that for a silent partner, Fonzie is pretty noisy. He's not even a serious restaurateur like Al.
Every time I disagree with him about anything, he gives me the same answer.
Fonzie shows up with a new waitress named Gloria. Also, he gave the construction workers an extra half-hour lunch break.
Those guys are working so hard out there, gave him an extra half hour for lunch, right?
Al is annoyed, both because of that and because he thought they were going to do the hiring together. But he also hired someone, his cousin from Italy, Sal, their new singing waiter.
Sing, Sal.
Che?
Canta, canta.
La donne mobile.
Fonzie's not into the idea. Al and Sal leave, and Fonzie expresses frustration to Richie that he has to take a big role in the business without this nervous.
You know, this morning he came to work with his underwear over his pants.
That night, Al is having dinner with the Cunninghams. He brings out dessert, a cake decorated with a model of the new Arnold's.
Oh, look at all the little tables,
Chocolate.
little chairs.
Gumdrops.
Ooh, little jukebox.
That's plastic.
And he brought a model of the new sign, and so did Fonzie. They both show them at the same time. One that says Big Al's, and one that says Fonzie's.
Wait a minute. That don't say Fonzie's.
That doesn't say Big Al's.
They immediately begin quarreling, and Fonzie snaps at Al for not putting his table by the jukebox and putting the bandstand all the way in the back. As they move the decor on the cake around, it soon devolves into them ruining the cake and declaring they don't want to be partners anymore. The night of the grand reopening, Al comes over to the Cunningham house with the key to the building, because he plans to sell the place because he and his partner can't get along. But Richie says that Fonzie gave him his key to give to Al, because he also wants out. And he didn't take kindly to Richie trying to change his mind.
I even called him a stupid, pig-headed baby.
How did he take that?
Well, he stuck me on the lube rack and rode me up and down.
The restaurant is opened, and customers stream in. Al actually did take a few of Fonzie's floor plan suggestions, and when Fonzie arrives, he's flattered to see as much. And flattered to see that there's a desk and a phone in the men's room, because it's his office.
You know, we always call this place your office, so I thought let's make it a real office for you.
Fonzie got Al a present too, his old spatula, saved from the fire and newly engraved. To Al, the best partner a man ever had.
Well, I wrote that down there, before we...
Before.
Yeah.
The two of them reconcile and decide to call the place Arnold's.
We could put our names right under that big A on the roof.
Proprietors, Big Al and Fonzie.
Sounds great. Dig this rhythm. Fonzie and Big Al. I'll tell you what. Look.
While the customers dance to Let's Twist Again.
Thank you, Peter. That was The New Arnolds. It first aired back on January 29th, 1980. Happy Days was followed that night by a new episode of Good Time Girls, in which Betty, Lorna Patterson, accepts too many marriage proposals from servicemen about to be sent overseas.
Tuesday on Happy Days.
Name up in neon.
The Fonz wants to turn the old Arnolds into the new Fonzies.
That's a knife in my back.
There's gonna be war between the new partners. Them, the Good Time Girls, are in for a wild old time.
I told you this was gonna happen.
When three eager fiancés show up all at once for the same girl.
Betty and I are getting married tonight.
Even when we got engaged, I had no idea it would come to this.
It's Dynamite Comedy, Tuesday night starting at 8 on ABC.
NBC had a new episode of The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, in which Deputy Perkins has to escort a key witness to a mob trial in Los Angeles, but he gets confused because she seems to have an exact double.
I'm seeing double here. 4 Krusties.
And CBS had a new episode of The White Shadow, in which Coach Reeves's new girlfriend turns out to be an exotic dancer. So of those three choices, Peter, what are you watching?
I'm kind of intrigued by the exact double plot line. So yeah, that's what I want to see.
I was intrigued by that same episode as well. I would have thought that transporting a key witness to a mob trial would have been enough plot for one episode, but Sheriff Lobo goes the extra mile.
It's the biker invasion and amnesia plot line all over again.
That's why Sheriff Lobo is stealing viewers away from Happy Days. The New Arnolds was directed by Jerry Paris, and it was written by Hollis White, a.k.a. Holly White. This was Hollis's second script for Happy Days. She previously wrote Fonzie's a Thespian. As for guest stars this week, let's start with David Gillum Fuller as Sal, Al's cousin. This is David's only credited appearance in a TV show or movie, but he was fairly well known in the theater world as an actor, singer, and producer. In New York, he worked as a cabaret singer and appeared off-Broadway in a show called Quiet Cry. At the time of this Happy Days episode, he was studying acting in Los Angeles, with Charles Nelson Riley being one of his teachers.
Today, little bananas, I'm going to teach you how to draw and color with Bic Banana Ink crayons. These are Bic Banana Ink crayons.
He also founded a non-profit organization in New York called Friends Always Creating Theater, or FACT. David died in 2018. Peter, what did you think of David Gillum Fuller as Sal?
My headcanon is that he's not actually Al's cousin. He's just a guy who was there, and Al was upset that Fonzie hired someone without consulting him. So he just made up a story about this guy being his cousin and a singing waiter, and whoever Sal is went along with it because he's an accommodating sort, and he has a very nice singing voice. I don't know much about opera, but he sounds good.
He sounded good to me too, but I could not believe that he was any relation to Al Del Vecchio. And I also was very skeptical that he was Italian, which obviously David Gillum Fuller was not at all. So I can completely believe your story. We also have Anita Merritt, also known as Juanita Merritt, as Gloria, the new waitress. Anita was just starting out when she did this episode of Happy Days, but she had already been in the William Shatner movie Kingdom of the Spiders.
Kingdom of the Spiders. The next victim could be you.
Gary Marshall later used her on Joni Loves Chachi. Anita's movies include Stripes, Looker, Holy Moses, and The Serpent Warriors. Her TV credits include The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, Hunter, The A-Team, and The New Mike Hammer.
Stop! Have a time!
Peter, did you have any particular feelings about Anita Merritt as Gloria?
She's just another one of Fonzie's one-off girlfriends who don't have any lines because that way they don't have to pay the actresses as much, which is a shame because, wow, she has a really impressive resume.
She has a great resume, and I was disappointed that she didn't even get to speak in this episode. As for songs this week, we have La Donna è Mobile. It's performed by David Gillum Fuller. This is a canzone, or provincial song, from Verdi's 1851 opera Rigoletto.
If you love spaghetti, just like I know you do, then my soft breadsticks will be a dream come true.
The title basically means the woman is fickle. I thought David did a very nice job with this. We hear an instrumental version of Who Put the Bomp in the Bomp 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 by Barry Mann. This is the first song played on the new jukebox at Arnold's. And Anson Williams performs Let's Twist Again by Chubby Checker.
Come on, let's twist again, like we did last year.
He also sang this in King Richard's Big Night earlier this season. As for cultural and historical references, when Howard says he doesn't want to hear bebop, a rebop, a bim bam boom.
Man works hard all day long, does not want to come home to hear bebop, a rebop, a bim bam boom. Out.
He seems to be combining several songs. There's Bebop-A-Lula, a 1956 song by Gene Vincent and his Blue Caps, Tutti Frutti, a 1955 song by Little Richard, and Bim Bam Boom, a 1956 song by the El Dorados. There actually was a Trans-Allied construction company. That's the construction company that's supposedly rebuilding Arnold's, but it wasn't founded until 1985, a year after Happy Days went off the air. And I like to think that they named themselves after the construction company in this episode. And adjusting for inflation, Norm the barber would be charging about $18 for a haircut.
Marion, I didn't know you cut hair.
Well, I didn't until Howard's barber raised his prices.
I'm not going to pay $2 for a haircut.
Which I think is still pretty reasonable for a haircut in 2022.
Yeah, that's reasonable enough. I once paid $30 for a haircut. It was a very good haircut, but you know.
This is the second time this season somebody's gotten a haircut at home in the Cunningham's living room. That's a weird motif, isn't it? Remember the mechanic? It was about Richie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I wonder if that'll become like a runner.
That would be a strange but interesting runner on the show. Other observations this week. This is at least the second time that the Cunningham house has served as a temporary Arnold's. It also served that function in Married Strangers last season when the real Arnold's was having a broken pipe fixed. I would like to think that probably the broken pipe was also Chachi's fault.
This is your fault. You caused this.
It would be. He brings nothing but misfortune with everything he touches.
Marion suggests naming the restaurant Arthur's.
I think that's just wonderful.
course, this is what it was called in the first episode of Happy Days back in season 1. When Howard suggests naming the place Fonzie's,
Marion, I think the boys meant to call it Fonzie's.
Oh, yes.
this is reminiscent of the controversy when ABC wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days.
During the off-season, I was approached by Tom Miller and Ed Milkus and Gary Marshall. They basically said, Fred Silverman wants us to change the name of the show to Fonzie's Happy Days. How do you feel about it? And I thought about it, and I said, rather than be in Fonzie's Happy Days, I'd rather go back to film school.
I thought this was a little in-joke about the Fonzie's Happy Days thing.
Oh man, I hope it was. It'd be kind of clever if it was.
You can hear the audience cringing when Fonzie starts defacing that cake.
I would take the bandstand and I would move it right over here, put up the piano right there in the middle.
Eventually, though, both Al and Fonzie start wrecking the cake and the audience gets into it. When he starts moving the items around on the cake, did you cringe at all?
Well, honestly, yeah. That's a waste of a perfectly good cake. They could have eaten that. Or maybe it was just a prop cake. Do you think it was a prop cake or do you think it was a real cake?
When I was a kid, my parents actually took the whole family on a vacation to California, and we toured Universal Studios. And on the studio tour, they gave us all the behind-the-scenes tricks and tips about making movies and TV shows. And one of them was that the ice cream on Happy Days was actually mashed potatoes.
Oh, like how the rain and singing in the rain was actually milk because it showed up better on screen.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
Doesn't that sound kind of disgusting once you know the truth of it? Oh gosh, now I'm thinking of Gene Kelly all covered in milk, and that is a disturbing image. I'm not a fan of the new Arnold's set, but I will admit that the redesign makes the place look more like a tavern or a pub, what with all that wood everywhere.
Yeah, and there's even like one of those little swinging doors that you see in like old-timey saloons.
Love and happiness can't live behind those swinging doors.
You know what it reminded me of was the Pilgrim version of Arnold's that we saw in the first
yeah.
That maybe was where the seed was planted right there in that episode. But somehow those picnic tables at the new Arnold's with the benches don't look nearly as comfortable. I would prefer to go to a restaurant that has actual booths where you can just lean back. And you can't do that at Arnold's now because they just have picnic tables.
Yeah, I miss the booths.
One really nice, subtle touch in this episode is that Al refers to Happy Days extra Mickey Wheatley by his real first name.
Hey, Mickey, let him in!
And for whatever reason, the men's room and the ladies' room at Arnold's have now switched sides, but they kept the coin-operated locks on the stall doors. So I have a theory that they did not entirely rebuild the new Arnold's set. They just took the old set and repainted it and repurposed it a little bit, and those stall doors from the old one are left over.
It's a leftover. What a sad word that is, leftover. How would you like to be a leftover?
So at least part of the old set did survive.
That's kind of nice.
And the camera crew is still getting used to the bandstand being on the other side of the restaurant. There is a very odd-looking shot in this episode where the camera is looking up at Potsy, and the camera is tilted at an awkward angle. I assume the blocking will get better as the show progresses.
You blockhead!
Overall, what were your thoughts on the new Arnold's set?
I don't like it as much as the old Arnold's, but it has its charms. If they're trying to make Arnold seem more mature, I don't know that it really works. The fact that it seems more like a tavern now makes more sense, although it doesn't really scream 1960s to me.
I thought they were trying to establish this as the kind of place that college students might go.
Well, yeah, but spoiler alert, but the college students will not be sticking around. We're going to be moving on to the next generation of high schoolers.
Exactly. I think they thought that maybe Ron and Don were going to hang around a little bit longer. However, the new Arnold's doesn't have the one thing that college students would want from a place like this.
What's that?
A liquor license.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to get drunk at Arnold's unless you bring in the booze yourself, I suppose. So, Peter, were there any outstanding Happy Days fashions this week?
No, not really.
So did you have any other observations that you wanted to make about the new Arnold's?
This episode ends with Al and Fonzie deciding to name the restaurant Arnold's as a compromise.
You know what? I got the name can't miss. We'll call the place Arnold's.
But we see the sign at the end. It still has the big A, the big neon A, and it still says Arnold's. So clearly that was already the name. So Fonzie extending a peace offering and saying, yeah, let's call it Arnold's as a compromise. That's not actually a compromise, Fonzie. You're just pretending that this was your idea so you can keep your pride.
The timeline in this episode is kind of strange in that both Al and Fonzie walk away from the project while it's still underway. But then the restaurant just opens and they hadn't decided on a name, supposedly. So what is this place called when it opens? Nothing? Is it not called anything?
The restaurant.
Wasn't there a football team that for a while had to be called the Washington football team or something?
The economics of it were not going to allow Washington's football team to continue on with that nickname.
Oh, God, was there?
Yeah, because the old name was offensive.
So yeah.
So yeah, maybe they just called it the restaurant that night. But I don't know how either one expected the restaurant to open with neither of them there. So Peter, I will ask that age-old, timeless question. Was this episode any good?
Yeah, I think it was a solid enough episode. There were some fun moments here and there. I really like the joke about Richie telling off Fonzie for being a baby. And then we find out that Fonzie stuck him on the lube rack and rode him up and down.
Phrasing. Boom! Inappropriate.
Because Fonzie is not a baby.
Well, that's something that comes out about Fonzie occasionally, is that he reverts to very childish behaviors, and he is known to throw temper tantrums and sulk and pout when he doesn't get his way. During their disputes about the restaurant and the way it should be run and the way it should be rebuilt, did you find yourself siding with Al more or with Fonzie more?
I found myself siding with Fonzie when it came to the construction workers. Yelling at them is not going to make them work harder, and they are on their lunch break. Let them be. Al.
Well, I thought that Al's behavior during the construction scenes would probably have been counterproductive in real life. Him being there and being worried and anxious all the time, that's not actually getting anything done or accomplished. It's just making life worse for everybody. On the other hand, I do understand that Al has been in the restaurant trade all his life, so he feels he might know better.
There's a big difference between us, Rich. I'm a restaurant man, born and bred.
I don't know. I think it was about 50-50 here. Nobody totally right and nobody totally wrong.
It's a little bit me, and it's a little bit you, too.
I will say that I found this episode pretty entertaining. We hadn't really explored the Fonzie versus Al dynamic before in Happy Days. I don't think there was ever a story that really put them into close proximity.
And there's also the fact that Al's a pretty conflict-averse guy.
That's an excellent point. He is the type of person who would be loath to get into a fight, whereas Fonzie is kind of addicted to conflict and often will confront people over things. So we hadn't had a story that throws these two characters together before. But that's something that you have to do when you have a show that's on the air for 11 seasons. You have to take your characters and mix them up and see what happens when you put them together into a story. Like, we got a Potsy and Joni story once, and that must have just come from the writers looking at the list of characters that they have to work with here. Okay, what if we take this character and put them with this character? Does that make a story? And in the case of Fonzie and Al, yeah, it does. And I think they will be partners at Arnold's for the rest of the series, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, until Al briefly leaves for Joni Loves Chachi.
Something magic in the way you hold me in your eyes. No one ever warned me love takes you by surprise.
Right. I keep forgetting about that side quest show.
Oh my God, it is. That is what it is. Like, they just leave, they do some stuff that doesn't really affect the main show, and then they come back.
Exactly. So it's harmless. I would say that was our verdict on Joni Loves Chachi, was that it was harmless. And I would say that the new Arnold's is pretty harmless as well. It does exactly what it needed to do, which was rebuild Arnold's after only 1 week. So we weren't deprived of Arnold's for any length of time. And it's a fun episode all around. It won't change your life, but it will amuse you for half an hour. So I would say check it out. So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things that we are doing?
Listeners can follow us on Twitter at Fonzie Podcast. They can follow me on Twitter at Peter Volfranc. That's PeterVulfranc.
And they can follow me on Twitter at Joe_A_Blevins. They can find this podcast online at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com. And they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at thesedaysaroourspodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, what do we have on the docket for next week?
Next week, Howard tries to shoot a commercial for Cunningham Hardware, and things go awry.
And we have one of the biggest guest stars in Happy Days history, in my opinion.
Hell yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to that. So see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
You never treat me gentle, yet you spin up all my gold. Then you look around for pig meat and tell me I'm too old. That's why we can't agree. Yes, baby, that's why we can't agree. if I don't see you no more, baby, that'll be way too soon for me.
Well, he stuck me on the lube rack and rode me up and down.